There he is. Lance, very good morning to you, sir.
How are you?
I'm assuming that you will be amongst the many throngs of people in this country who don't believe Morgan McSweeney's story, or either that, or have you got his phone?
No, I've got it. Actually, somebody sent it to me, and I've kept it here.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I don't know whether you've seen this. I'm going to play it to you. We played it to Sarah Poachy just a minute ago. This is a sort of, rather, for me anyway, rather exasperated illustration of how hopelessly misguided the youth of today is about what's going on in the Middle East. Check this out.
Isn't it a little bit homophobic that we're so focused on the straights of Hormuz and not the gays of Hormuz?
Yes, I agree. Yes, for sure.
Why do you think they're willing to leave the gays of Hormuz behind?
I think it's just historically, gays have always been very discriminated against, which is wrong on so many levels.
Even in war.
Yeah, even in war. It just takes more reform in government, obviously, and then also educating society.
I just feel like if we're going to go in there, we can't leave the gay people behind.
Right.
I don't think we should go in there at all, but if we're going to, the gays of Hormuz, we could turn it into Fire Island.
For sure.
You probably know, like I do, what Fire Island is all about. But doesn't that tell you what's wrong with people?
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't say that the American attacks on Iran are transatlantic.
It really is, isn't it? Incredible. I mean, we've seen this with the Greens at the weekend, doing that ludicrous, march and rally in London, where, they're dancing on the stage with a bunch of people in bondage gear. And apparently there's a big row now going on between the Islamists, who don't obviously want anything to do with that, and the Greens, who are all about, trans rights and, let's have a bit of a bondage session and let's all, tie each other up and whip each other. So, I mean, who knows how they're managing to hold that kind of coalition together?
Well, Islam has gone through periods of bondage and slavery in the past, so maybe it's a sort of reawakening for them. But the thing that I find, I mean, there's so many things that are completely bonkers about Polanski. But the thing that I always find amusing is that he says that he doesn't believe that countries should, that states should have national boundaries.
No.
And yet he believes there should be a state of Palestine.
Right.
So is that going to be the only state in the world, and there won't be other states? He completely talks out of his backside.
Right. I mean, I'm assuming that it's a kind of, I'm hoping anyway, that it's a sort of a bubble in the kind of mad world in which we now live, and that by the time we've all sort of woken up on May the 7th or May the 8th or whatever it is, you'll kind of go, well, they didn't get that many votes after all. But the worry is that actually, because the people like that woman in that video are so stupid, they don't see what you're saying. They don't see the sense of what you've just said about, the no borders except for the one around Palestine. They don't get it. And they'll actually, I mean, I'm told that they might actually get quite a lot of votes in the local elections in London, which means that they might end up actually running quite a few of the local boroughs.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect it is a bubble, and they obviously did well in the last by-election, and I think that was because of the nature of that seat.
Yes.
But and I do hope it's a bubble, and it's pretty early on in the election cycle, so it's got plenty of time to run, and he's got more and more time to be exposed. But you are absolutely right; there are a lot of ignorant people out there, and heaven forbid, if he did actually manage to seize power, perhaps in coalition with Labour and are your party still going? I don't know if they're still going, but
I'm not sure.
But
nobody knows. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn was last spotted in Havana.
I mean, I could see a situation where if that were to happen, he might say that he's going to make the support of Zionism or Israel illegal, and if people support it, they get locked up, and then we're going to be in early 1930s Germany territory. He is very dangerous because he is. Not only is he ignorant, but his followers are so ignorant. So there is a danger, but hopefully common sense will prevail. And I'm sort of quite optimistic and hopeful about progress with the Iran war. I do think that whatever we think about the war at the moment, I think a lot of the underlying problems we have with Islamic extremism, they do emanate from that part of the world, from Iran.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I find myself, Lance, having these arguments with people all the time who go, it's not our war, it's got nothing to do with us, we shouldn't be involved. And I go, do you not know what Iran does? Have you not watched what they've been doing for the last 25, 30 years? They've been arming Hamas, they've been arming Hezbollah, been arming the Houthis, creating a real division in the Middle East, and now, of course, lashing out even at people that supported them in the past, like Qatar. Sending drone missiles into Qatar. They don't care anymore.
Worse than that, I think that they have been quietly infiltrating the West, and less quietly in more recent times, not only Iran, Muslim Brotherhood as well. And I do think that is where we have a problem that needs to be rooted out. See, if Iran does fall, all the extremism that we have in the UK and in the West, it doesn't just come out of nowhere. It is organized, it is funded, and a lot of that has come from Iran and from the Muslim Brotherhood. And I think if Iran does fall and the Iranian people have their freedom, which they well deserve, I think that will hopefully be a game changer for the West. But obviously, still a lot of work does need to be done over here to educate and to start, remove. People call it entryism, don't they? They say that these people have used our democratic freedoms to infiltrate our systems so that they can start to take over. And we need to reverse that process.
We do. Because we've also known that there are direct links from Iran to certain, terrorist activities in this country. I think it was only, last year or the year before, where they arrested those 4 guys who had come here on a small boat, who were all Iranian Revolutionary Guard types who had come here specifically to attack the Israeli embassy, to set bombs off in various parts of Britain. So it's a clear and present danger. There's no question about that at all. And yet you've still got people marching around in London, waving the Iranian flag of the regime, and saying, death to Israel, death to America, death to Britain. Nobody does anything.
No, and that's right. And what I don't understand, people keep, they're saying, we need to prescribe the IRGC, but quite honestly, prescribing it is only half of it. If you're not going to take action once they're prescribed, prescription makes a complete is a joke. Hamas and Hezbollah are both prescribed as terrorist organizations, and yet on campus across the UK, students are sort of glorifying and cheering for Hamas and Hezbollah. That is a criminal offence where you could potentially be imprisoned. I think it's even up to 14 years for glorifying a prescribed terrorist organisation, and yet the authorities do absolutely nothing at all. And one has to question why. Have they, to some extent, been infiltrated? Have the police been infiltrated? Look at what happened with the West Midlands police, Avon and Somerset. Look at what's going on in Margate with this exhibition with paintings of Jews eating babies, and the police not doing a thing about it. The Met Police in London, allowing people to go on these protests week after week, saying globalise the Intifada, which we all know what that means. It basically means go and kill Jews wherever they are. So the police are doing nothing. The Home Office are doing very little. The CPS very little. The whole judiciary has done nothing. The education department is allowing this hatred on campus. The NHS, doctors, Jewish people are afraid to go into hospital, and where there's a form to tick, do you want kosher food? They're afraid to tick it in case the doctors, maltreat them because they're Jewish. It's this is a really big problem, and it's not just a problem, obviously, for Jewish people. This is a sign of a serious decline in societal norms in the UK.
Yeah. Totally, absolutely, and it kind of has happened in a way rather much overnight. I've said this many times, and you and I have had conversations that back in the back in the 70s, in the days of the OPEC crisis, in the days of the 6-Day War, the Golan Heights and Yasser Arafat and the PLO and all of that, we didn't have these demonstrations. And I say, and people castigate me for it, and no doubt they will report me to somebody for it, because we didn't have all of the people from the Middle East living here. who are anti-Jewish, right? So we didn't have, marching in the streets around, we don't like Golda Meir, she's the devil herself. We didn't have any of that because they weren't here. But now they are here. They're anti-Jewish on the streets of London.
No, and we also had a mainstream media then that was quite neutral.
Yeah.
But I'm absolutely convinced that the BBC have been infiltrated, throughout the organisation with this. They've spent the last 25 to 30 years. We've had this conversation before, Mike. 25 to 30 years demonizing and delegitimizing Israel. It's the only democracy in the Middle East.
Yeah.
You only have to you go there, and within 2 minutes of arriving and walking on the beachfront in Tel Aviv, you realize that Jews and Muslims and Christians all live very happily together, and everybody has equal rights. This idea an apartheid state, which keeps getting repeated, is absolute. It's a blatant lie. Absolutely wrong. But you wouldn't know that if you listen to the BBC or to Sky News. You just wouldn't know that. And the BBC have been at this for a long, long time. And we've also, I think we've had a conversation about something called the Balin Report. Do you remember that?
I do.
So, 20 years ago, the BBC were being accused of bias against Israel, and they decided to conduct their own internal reports by a guy called Malcolm Balin into whether or not that was a reasonable claim. And this report has never ever been made public. Somebody tried to get it released under Freedom of Information about 10 years ago. And the BBC spent £500,000 on legal fees to make sure this thing never saw the light of day. Now, there have been so many scandals. You've just been talking about them with, your previous guests. Yeah. So many scandals that the BBC have been involved in. They talk about how they want to be a transparent organisation. Well, if you want to be transparent, why didn't you release this report? Right. Let's see what you were saying about your own bias, and let's see what recommendations you made, and did you follow those recommendations? It's an absolute. We have anti-Semitism now at an all-time high post World War II. There's a public interest in actually revealing how the BBC have been behaving, and they do absolutely bugger all. It's absolutely disgusting. I would go as far as saying that when Hamas did that attack on October the 7th, they knew full well that they could never ever win this militarily. There's no way they could do it. They knew that they would get the support of the BBC and mainstream organisations. And that's why they did it, because they knew they'd get media support, which would mean a PR campaign against Israel, and that would help their long-term interests. Well, I don't think it's worked because of Donald Trump, and I think the whole thing has completely backfired. And let's hope Iran falls much sooner than the mainstream media are making out. And I think it will, actually. So hopefully it's all turned around.
I think you're right. And also, let's not forget, it's not just the BBC, as you mentioned Sky already. What about ITV? Ed Balls, when he was interviewing Dove Forman the other day, the day after the 4 ambulances were set on fire by what we believe to be possibly Iranian-backed terrorists, he actually said on television, well, the thing is, Nick Timothy was having a go at the iftar in Trafalgar Square, and isn't that possibly why this has happened? And you're kind of going, what? So you're saying it's justifiable now to set fire to some ambulances run by a Jewish charity on the basis that a Tory MP has questioned whether or not it's a good idea for many, many hundreds of Muslim men to bow down in Trafalgar Square, in a show of force? Really?
Yeah. Well, I just think, to be honest, I mean, Ed Balls has always been, historically quite supportive of Israel. So, one was sort of almost quite surprised that he came out with a comment like that. But I think so many people in the media, unlike you, Mike, unlike you, they just sort of feel that, you have to use a certain type of language once you're on air. Right. And they sort of... they don't say necessarily what they really think, or they've become so brainwashed over the years that it sort of slips out. Yeah. But that was a ridiculous comment by Ed Balls, and I thought that Dov Forman, who's no relation to me,
yes, I understand that. No. Let me ask you
I think
one.
he responded brilliantly.
He did. He was great. One final question. How's business? Because obviously we're under threat from all sorts of different places, you know, in terms of energy costs, in terms of fuel costs, in terms of... I saw your tweet the other day about being in Zabar's in New York, which was great. I know Zabar's well. And so congratulations for getting your salmon in there. What about business? How are you being affected by the rising costs of everything?
Well, I'm absolutely convinced that Rachel Reeves is sort of rubbing her hands about this war in Iraq because she just needs excuses for how bad the economy is doing. And actually...
well, she's also making money from it, isn't she?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But business is tough at the moment. There's no question about it. You know, we supply, apart from supplying into retail shops, we supply the hospitality industry, and that's been totally screwed over recent years. With tax increases, with net zero nonsense. Our customer base is struggling. Having said that, we also have our online business, Forman and Field, right. Where we're supplying, I would say, fairly affluent consumers with really fantastic food delivered to their homes, and that's going very well. So, what we found in difficult times and recessionary times over the years, and we've been going for 120 years, so we've been through quite a few recessions and depressions over the years, is that actually when certainly at the more affluent end, when tough times come along, people tend to cut back on their big spends. They might not buy more furniture for their home or redo the home, or they might cut back on their holidays, but they generally, they need their little luxuries in life. And so, they don't cut back on their food. And in fact, if anything, they might spend more because, food, good food makes everybody happy. Yeah. But the other thing I would say is that, business is a sort of a game. And, we as business people can't change the rules of the game, unlike politicians. So you just have to play by the rules. And even if the rules make life very difficult, in this game, you're competing against other people that are also playing by the same rules. So you've just got to be better than them to survive. So what tends to happen in these times is that the weak businesses and the businesses that are badly managed tend to sort of fall by the wayside, and the stronger ones survive and live to see another day. So that's what we're doing at the moment.
Yes.
Mike.
Well, good luck with it, and we look forward to seeing you on whatever is the other side of this madness. But I'll see you soon anyway. Hopefully, Lance Forman, thank you very much indeed. Always a pleasure to see you. Great show once again. We're at 9:31 on the international clock. Jolly Chew says, "Save the gays of Hormuz." Yes, indeed.